Welcome to our happy birthday party, our 20th year on the air, and welcome to the last show of the
For some
Brakeman Bill
kids,
Show.
summer vacation used to mean sitting around and watching a whole lot of TV. And one of the things the kids around here used to watch was the Brakeman Bill Show on Channel 11. Our resident historian, Felix Bunnell, caught up with Brakeman Bill, who is still chugging along in his 90s. Felix is brought to us by Lake Washington Windows and Doors. Good morning, Felix.
Morning, Dave. Yeah, I heard from my brother yesterday morning there was a rumor spreading on social media. I'm not going to repeat it, but it inspired me right away to reach out to Bill McLean. He's better known to at least some portion of the KIRO audience as Brakeman Bill. Host of the Brakeman Bill Show on Channel 11 for 20 years, from 1955 to 1975. That audio we heard at the top was from the very last show, the only one that was recorded, of course. Now, on that show, he played cartoons, he drew funny sketches, and he engaged in witty repartee with a certain black sock puppet named Crazy Donkey, who was voiced and operated by the energetic and imaginative Warren Reed. Now, Bill's doing well. He'll be turning 94 in a few weeks. He's still married to Jean, his high school sweetheart. They met at Lincoln High School in Tacoma many years ago. Now, Brakeman Bill wore overalls and a striped railroad hat on the set of the show, and he ran a model train called the Cartoon Special. Bill says he had very devoted fans, and even in his street clothes, he'd get recognized.
I still do. Every once in a while, I'll get a double take or a triple take, and he looks familiar. Once in a great while, says, "Aren't you Brakeman Bill?" I say yes. Now, one thing, my audience, a great deal of them were they were latchkey kids, came home from school, and there was nobody there. So they went through the TV on, and there I was. I had the afternoon show. JP had the morning show, and I was their surrogate parent.
Yeah, you heard Brakeman Bill mention J.P. Patches, who hosted a kid show on KIRO TV for 23 years. Now, that surrogate parent effect that Bill described was something J.P. had experienced too. There was something special about watching someone on local TV and then being able to see him in real life too. I remember that in the 70s. It was very strange. It means a lot of love between the local host and local fans.
I was at a barber shop. One came up to me and started crying and said, "You don't realize how much you meant to me and other kids like me. We were so alone, and all we had was you. And she bought my haircut. That's what I went to pay for it." And that was not unusual. A lot of times people give me big hugs, and one of my fan clubs were a bunch of loggers up in Morton. Figured that one out. Frat houses at the universities had Brakeman Bill fan clubs. Different era.
Yeah, and when I spoke with Bill yesterday, we had a wide-ranging conversation about growing up in Tacoma during the Depression. He had a train set on his TV show, but as a kid, his family couldn't afford a train set as a kid. Now, we talked about the history of the show, the thousands of personal appearances he made over the years doing fundraisers for local PTAs, and the live ads he did for stuff like Bosco chocolate syrup or Treetop apple juice. I also learned Bill McLean did morning drive radio as sportscasting in Ellensburg and then Yakima in the late 40s and early 50s, before moving back home to Tacoma to work in radio and TV at Channel 11 and Channel 11's radio station, KTNT. Now, that's where he was working as a camera operator when he got the nod to take over the TV show, after the original host, a guy named Engineer Walt, played by Dave Richardson, came down with polio. This was the mid-1950s, after all. Now, the show, with the railroad theme and the model trains, was based on a similar show in Los Angeles. Now, that led me to a specific question about the wardrobe.
Do you still have the overalls and the hat somewhere?
I do.
When's the last time you put them on?
I couldn't remember. It's been so many years. I think the last one, they dedicated a locomotive out in 5. I showed up for that one, the last hurrah.
The last hurrah for the TV show was more than 46 years ago, April 1st, 1975. Brakeman Bill blames that, at least partially, on someone you wouldn't suspect, Mr. Rogers.
I hate to say this. I thought Mr. Rogers was a wimp. He just came across so soft. Not to knock him, but he was one of the guys that took me off the air. The PBS people decided that live entertainers like me, live hosts, kids shows, who were selling bicycles on the air to kids that couldn't afford a bike, and they were selling breakfast cereals that rot their teeth out, and toys commercials that poor kids couldn't afford. A bunch of hooey. So they passed an X4 rule with the broadcasters. I could no longer do live commercials. That was the end of my show.
Yeah, the thought was that guys like Brakeman Bill and JP Patches, anyone who had that kind of relationship with viewers, had too much influence over young minds. You know, when the surrogate parent promoted some toy or food product on his show, the kids in the audience just took it as a command to buy. So when those commercials went away because of changes, not to the law, but to the National Association of Broadcasters Code, which was very powerful in 1973, and that was a change that people like Mr. Rogers and Action for Children's Television had called for since the early 70s. That revenue that supported the programs went away too. So Brakeman Bill hung on for a few more years. JP hung on for a few more years beyond that. So he's still going strong at 93. Brakeman Bill is no wimp, that's for sure. But his wife, Jean McLean, did let me in on a little secret.
You know, you're lucky that you called him because I had him out in the yard working, and he hates yard work. I had to do the yard work, and he got away with not doing it, so...
So, I mean, they're both in their 90s. They both sound really vigorous. They live on their own. I mean, they're doing their yard work outside. These are people who have somehow found the secret of the magical secret of long-term health. So, Warren Reed, the voice and the arm of Crazy Donkey, passed away back in 1986. He was really sort of the wacky, crazy center of the show. The energy between those two guys is what made the show work. We're not likely to see local kids shows on TV ever again just because of those rules, because of just the dynamics, the economics of it. The most recent attempt was in the early 90s when Bill McLean was promotions director at Channel 11. He helped get a show on the air called Ranger, Charlie, and Roscoe. That did last a few years, and the final co-host was MJ McDermott, who does the weather on Channel 13 these days. So I thought, Dave, you could do a kid show host maybe on C-SPAN. Like, hey, kids, it's time to watch the Select Committee on Benghazi again. And Sully could be dressed up as Choke Point the Clown, kind of providing that kind of sort of antic comic relief.
That's true. We could turn this into a children's show.
We really could. I think, that's how I became, my unhealthy obsession with local media began with shows like Brakeman Bill. And that's where you get them early, right? You get them hooked early, and then they have viewers for life. So,
well, I'll tell you, my obsession, I didn't grow up here, but Bosco was the big thing on children's shows. And I still have a jar of Bosco in my pantry.
Wow, is it vintage Bosco or recent Bosco?
No, well, I don't think my 1954 jar of Bosco would be safe to eat now. But no, I do have a recent Bosco. The form is not quite the same, but it is there anytime I feel I need the indulgence, and it was all because of the children's show I grew up with. That's great that he's doing so well at the age of 94. And I don't think it's any secret. I think yard work does keep you alive.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I hate yard work. So anyway, it's been nice knowing you, Dave. Now, I'm always trying to help our promotions people out, trying to get them to embrace the whole history thing here on Seattle's Morning News. So if we have time for this, Brakeman Bill helped me come up with just this little announcement.
Hi, gang. This is Brakeman Bill, asking you to be sure and listen to my pal Felix Pinnell on KIRO Radio 97.3. He's a good guy.
I love Brakeman Bill. I love those guys. Miss JP Patches, just a bunch of really nice people who we were lucky enough to have on the air here locally in the Puget Sound for decades.
Felix Pinnell, you can find all his features at mynorthwest.com. Thank you, Felix.
Thanks, Dave.